The spot where her body was found is now marked by a police tent. It's about 50 yards from the main road here.
It was just after 10:30 this morning. Police were called to Snapper Point following reports a woman's body was found face down in a blowhole.
Post-mortem revealed that the woman had suffered a number of wounds, significantly some stab wounds.
The neighborhood here really shook up about this. Well, the girl's body was found inside an abandoned house behind me.
Back outside, still no clothing on from the waist down.
How painful would that injury have been?
Very painful.
He showed up to that date with a knife hidden up his sleeve. She had absolutely no idea. In just a few hours, her body would be lying in the nettles inside the Oxy Woods Nature Reserve, stripped, washed down with water. More than 30 stab wounds to her neck, her face, and her head. May 31st, 2007. Walton on Thames, United Kingdom. 32-year-old Kate Beagley disappears. She doesn't show up for work. She's not answering her phone. And that's just not like her. She held a senior position at Centrica. Responsible, punctual, surrounded by friends. She wouldn't just vanish like that. No way. Then her friends start getting text messages from her phone. Technically, they're from her, but the tone feels off. The wording is different. The voice behind those messages, it doesn't sound like Kate. At her home, investigators find a second phone. In the contacts list, there's a man named Carl. She'd met up with him the night before. Carl Taylor, 27 years old, living in a one-bedroom apartment in Covent Garden. He had a prior conviction, practiced martial arts, worked as a soccer coach and a fitness instructor. Police call him. He answers right away, says she gave him a ride to Twickenham. After that, he claims he got on a bus and never saw her again. But just a few hours later, his mother tells a different story. Early in the morning on May 31st, he shows up at her place driving a Volkswagen Golf. He washes the car. She notices it immediately. It's new to her. She's never seen that car before. It was Kate's Volkswagen Golf. At 6:15 in the morning, he hands his mother gift vouchers. They belong to Kate. They had been stored in the glove compartment of her car. He sells her phone to someone he knows. He even brags about his new car. Cameras capture Kate's vehicle around midnight on May 30th near Chiswick Bridge. The car is heading in the opposite direction from her home. The driving looks erratic. Unsteady, almost frantic. He's brought in for questioning. He's evasive. Then he goes quiet. Every question gets the same answer. No comment. He's arrested on suspicion of kidnapping. Later, on suspicion of murder. And he stays silent. His detention is extended. Still silent. Security cameras catch him at a gas station. Kate's body is in the trunk. He buys 1 pound worth of fuel. Just 1 pound. Think about that for a second. On Sunday evening, he calls his mother. After that, he confesses. He says he wanted to take her car. She resisted. So he stabbed her in the throat. And he kept stabbing her because she was reaching toward his face, like she was trying to fight him off. He leads police to Oxy Woods near Watford. At 3 o'clock in the morning, her body is found. She had been undressed, washed with bottled water that had been kept in her own car. He had thrown the knife out of the vehicle along the motorway. It would be recovered later. Her blood was on the blade. The autopsy confirms more than 30 stab wounds. Self-defense is ruled out. In court, he changes his story, claims she took her own life. How exactly he refuses to explain. Less than 2 hours later, the jury returns a verdict. Guilty. He is sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. But all of it started with one evening, one date, and a knife he brought with him. So, to really understand this story, we have to go back to the very beginning. Walton on Thames, United Kingdom. A small town in the county of Surrey, in the southeast of England. It sits along the River Thames, and it's the kind of place that feels calm, almost tucked away from the world. There's a wide waterfront area perfect for long walks, a neat promenade with benches where people just sit and watch the water. In the center of town, you'll find small hotels, cozy cafes, and local shops with everyday essentials. It's compact, You can walk pretty much everywhere. The train station connects directly to other major towns in the region, including London. The vibe here? Quiet, steady, no wild nightlife, nothing chaotic, just peaceful. By the way, where are you watching this from? And what time is it where you are right now? I'm honestly really curious to know where my audience is tuning in from. Go ahead and drop it in the comments. While you're doing that, I'll keep going. In this quiet, picture-perfect town, a woman was suddenly reported missing. 32-year-old Kate Beagley didn't show up for work. No one had heard from her. Her father knew that she had gone out the night before, so he decided to drive over to her place to check if everything was okay. When he arrived, she wasn't there. She also missed a scheduled appointment, and that just wasn't like Kate, not at all. Her father knew something wasn't right, so he reported her missing to the police. It wasn't only law enforcement searching for her. Her friends organized their own efforts, putting up missing person posters all over the area, hoping someone, anyone, had seen something. At that time, Facebook was still in its early days, but they created a group there to share updates and spread awareness. Kate was described as someone truly special, dedicated, always smiling, warm, the kind of person you could count on when things got tough. She worked for a company listed on the FTSE 100, and through sheer hard work, she earned a senior role national compliance manager at the gas company Centrica. She had a big circle of friends. She loved to travel. She had this adventurous spirit, like she was always ready for the next experience. But at the same time, she was responsible, grounded. She would never just disappear without telling someone where she was going. That wasn't her. Even though Walton-on-Thames was generally a quiet place, where serious crime was rare, there was another case in the background that still haunted the public: the abduction and murder of Millie Dowler. Millie Dowler was a 13-year-old schoolgirl who was abducted in Walton-on-Thames in March of 2002. Her remains were found several months later. Her murder shocked the country and stayed in the headlines for years while the hunt for her killer dragged on. It took years before he was finally caught. By that time, he was already serving sentences for 2 other murders and 1 attempted murder. On June 23, 2011, Levi Belfield was convicted of the abduction and murder of Millie Dowler. He received another life sentence, whole life imprisonment, meaning no chance of parole. But when Kate disappeared, Millie's killer hadn't yet been caught. So the police not only had to investigate Kate's case, they also had to calm a terrified community that feared the worst. Then something happened that raised serious red flags. Kate's friends began receiving text messages from her phone, but they didn't sound like her. And you know how everyone has their own texting style, certain phrases they use, certain ways they write? These messages didn't match. The wording felt off. Expressions she would never use. When police searched her home, they found a second phone. Detectives from the Missing Persons Unit examined it more closely and decided to call some of the numbers saved in the contacts list. One of those numbers belonged to a man she had met the evening before she was reported missing. Her friends didn't know much about him, just that his name was Carl. They had met in a club in central London a few weeks earlier. Maybe she had gone back to his place? Her family said that seemed unlikely. So, who exactly was this Carl? His name was Carl Taylor. He had been living for about 8 years in a 1-bedroom apartment in Covent Garden. He did have a criminal record, but nothing that immediately set off major alarm bells. In 2002, he was convicted of obtaining property by deception. That same year, he attempted to take his own life by jumping from a bridge. Thankfully, he was talked down. His mother pleaded with him to seek help, and he was evaluated by psychiatrists. On the phone that had been found in Kate's house, investigators discovered text messages between the two of them. They were arranging to meet up. So this wasn't random. This was planned. The first hours after someone is reported missing are absolutely critical. That window can make or break a case. So police knew they couldn't afford to wait. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain by calling him. And, surprisingly, he picked up. He admitted that he was the man she had met. He said she had given him a ride to Twickenham. After that, according to him, he got on a bus to head home and never saw her again. But, that story didn't add up. Police spoke with his mother, and she told them that in the early hours of May 31st, the very day Kate was reported missing, he arrived at her house driving a new car, a Volkswagen Golf. She didn't recognize it. She had never seen that car before. And not only that, he was washing it. So when confronted with that, his explanation was this: I got the car from a woman. She needed it clean so she could take her kids to school. But that was a lie. The Volkswagen Golf was Kate's, and she was missing. If she had dropped him off and he never saw her again, then why did he have her car? And if there was some completely innocent explanation for that, why didn't he immediately tell police once he heard she had disappeared? As investigators dug deeper, they realized the Volkswagen wasn't the only one of Kate's belongings in his possession. That same morning, at 6:15 a.m., he suddenly handed his mother several gift vouchers. But they weren't his. They had been stored in the glove compartment of Kate's car. On top of that, he sold a phone to one of his friends. That phone later turned out to be Kate's. And as if that wasn't enough, he was bragging about his new car. Further checks showed that her vehicle had been seen shortly before midnight on May 30th. It was captured driving across Chiswick Bridge, heading in the opposite direction from where Kate lived. The driving was described as chaotic, erratic. One police officer even noticed the car and ran it through the police national computer. With every passing hour, things looked worse. It was becoming painfully clear that Kate had likely suffered serious harm. Carl Taylor was 27 years old. He practiced martial arts, worked as a soccer coach and a fitness instructor. He was in excellent physical shape, strong. Overpowering Kate would not have been difficult for him. Police decided he needed to be brought in for questioning. If this was all some massive misunderstanding, if he truly had nothing to do with whatever happened to Kate, this was his opportunity to explain everything. But there was one problem. The man who had answered so quickly that morning was now completely silent. He wasn't responding to calls. And when police call you in the United Kingdom, the number usually shows up as unknown because it's withheld. So chances are, he had a pretty good idea who was trying to reach him. So officers switched tactics. They called from a personal number. And just like that, Carl answered. He repeated the same version of events, same story. But when they asked for details, he stayed vague, dodged specifics, nothing solid. They told him 2 officers would be coming to London to take a formal statement, because what he'd said over the phone wasn't enough. It didn't reassure anyone. And then he asked something that felt off. He asked if they could meet him at a party he was planning to attend that evening, at an apartment in Holland Park. A party. A woman he had just gone on a date with was missing. He had been driving her car with no credible explanation, and yet he was acting like everything was normal. That alone raised red flags. Officers arrived and took him into a separate room to talk privately. But the face-to-face conversation didn't ease their concerns. If anything, it made them worse. He was still evasive, still vague, not really answering the questions being put to him. Meanwhile, more and more people started arriving at the party. Alcohol was flowing freely. And let's be honest, that's not exactly the ideal setting for a police interview. Carl's behavior began to shift too. He grew visibly irritated, increasingly agitated, his tone sharper. Officers started to feel uneasy about their own safety. A decision was made. He would be detained and taken back to Walton-on-Thames. Because of the safety concerns, backup from the Metropolitan Police Service was requested. While waiting for additional officers to arrive, the detective sergeant on scene came up with a plan. He created a reason to step outside with Carl and walk him down to the police vehicle. Carl, apparently unaware of what was about to happen, went downstairs and got into the car. That's when he was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Kate Beagley. He was transported back to Walton and placed in a cell. The case was handed over to the Major Crime Unit. The investigation was led by Detective Chief Inspector Mark Preston. Time was critical. If there was any chance at all of finding Kate alive, they needed answers. But his story didn't change. There was still no word from Kate. No sightings, no trace. So investigators made the decision to rearrest Carl Taylor, this time on suspicion of murder. He was interviewed again, and this time, he refused to speak. Every single question was met with the same response: no comment. Police obtained a court warrant to extend his detention, giving them more time to question him, but even then, same answer: no comment. He refused to explain why he had her car. He refused to explain why CCTV captured him at a gas station topping up fuel. And here's the strange part. He only bought £1 worth of petrol. £1. Like, what was that even supposed to accomplish? Piece by piece, the evidence was building a dark picture. Circumstantial, yes, but heavy. And investigators knew they needed something more concrete. They needed him to talk. He was taken back to his cell, left alone to sit with the weight of the evidence that had just been laid out in front of him. On Sunday evening, he was allowed one more phone call to his mother. After that, a decision was made to interview him again. By that point, Detective Chief Inspector Mark Preston had been awake for more than 24 hours. Completely exhausted, he finally decided to go home and get some rest. And the moment his head hit the pillow, his phone rang. It was the station. Carl Taylor had confessed. Not only did he admit to the murder, he agreed to take officers to where her body was. His account of what happened was as cold as it was horrific. He said he wanted her car. That was the motive. So he attacked her. She fought back, and because she resisted, he stabbed her multiple times. Then he told police, "She pushed me away. She was grabbing at me, so I stabbed her in the throat, and I kept cutting her neck again and again because she was reaching for my face." But for the officers, his story just didn't hold up. He was physically much stronger than she was. He had martial arts training. So why did he feel the need to use a knife against someone he could have easily overpowered? That question hung in the air. Investigators didn't buy his explanation. He told them he had left her body near Watford, in Hertfordshire. Police contacted Hertfordshire Constabulary for assistance, and a joint operation was organized. When they transported him there, it wasn't casual, it was a full-scale controlled movement. The entire journey had to be recorded on both video and audio to preserve every possible piece of evidence. He was still under official caution. Officers had to ensure everyone's safety and eliminate any chance of escape. It was well past midnight when they headed toward Watford. Carl gave directions from the back seat. And you have to wonder, was this finally the truth, or was it going to be another dead end? He led them to a parking area at a local nature reserve called Oxey Woods. It was dark, unsettlingly quiet. You could barely see in front of you. Carl stepped out of the vehicle and walked toward a patch of stinging nettles. One of the officers approached from behind, deliberately avoiding the obvious path the killer himself had taken, preserving the ground, preserving potential evidence. And right there, in those woods, the missing persons investigation came to an end. At 3 o'clock that morning, her body was found. Kate's naked body was discovered there in the woods. The area was immediately sealed off, and forensic teams began the slow, painstaking process of documenting and collecting evidence. Every inch had to be examined carefully. Nothing could be missed. In a statement released on behalf of her family, her parents, Alan and Claire, along with her brother, Guy, described Kate as loving, caring, dependable, devoted, and incredibly popular, a daughter, sister, granddaughter, godmother, and friend who was deeply committed to her family and the people she loved. They said, "Kate will be missed every day in everything we do by everyone who knew her." Flowers were left at the scene. So many flowers. People were shaken. Truly shaken. One of the messages left there read, "I never met you, but it feels like I've known you my whole life. My heart goes out to everyone who was blessed with your love and your friendship. The world is poorer without you." Kate's body was so severely damaged, and the hot weather had already accelerated decomposition, that a formal visual identification wasn't possible at first. Investigators had to rely on DNA analysis to confirm it was her. Her clothes had been removed. Her body had been washed. Carl claimed, "I wanted to spiritually cleanse her and leave her open to the stars." Aside from her body, nothing else was found at first. Despite an intensive search, investigators couldn't immediately locate the murder weapon or any of Kate's personal belongings. Later, it came out that Carl Taylor had thrown the knife from her car while driving along the motorway after disposing of her body. And somehow, almost unbelievably, officers managed to recover the weapon along with part of her clothing. Kate always kept bottles of water in her car. Those were recovered too. Some of them had been used to wash her body. Her blood was found on the knife blade. Police still needed to locate her car. It could contain critical forensic evidence. Carl agreed to show them where it was. He said he had left it in a neighborhood in southwest London, and that's exactly where officers found it. The post-mortem revealed a horrific list of injuries. Kate had suffered more than 30 stab wounds to her neck, her face, and her head. The news devastated her family. Their grief was immeasurable. Losing a daughter, a sister, a friend, in such a violent way, it left so many questions. Why so many wounds? Why that level of brutality? So what really happened that night? The man who had once refused to answer questions now agreed to take police back to the pub in Richmond Hill where he and Kate had their first date. Across the road was an embankment overlooking the Thames, lined with benches. Carl said it was on one of those benches that he attacked her. Blood was found on the ground, on the steps, on the railings leading back toward the pub. Forensic testing confirmed it was Kate's blood. Based on the totality of the evidence, Carl Taylor was formally charged with the murder of Kate Beagley. And yet, despite his earlier confession and all the forensic findings, he pleaded not guilty in court. Now he claimed he had acted in self-defense. He even suggested that Kate had taken her own life. A claim he never clearly explained. To strengthen the prosecution's case further, police returned to the nature reserve where her body had been discovered, searching for anything they might have missed. Because investigators considered the possibility of a sexual motive, they collected more than 100 used condoms found in the area and tested every single one. None of them contained DNA belonging to Carl or to Kate. Later, it was reported that while in prison, Carl became friendly with Levi Belfield, the man convicted of murdering Millie Dowler. At the time, it wasn't publicly known that he had also formed ties with Mark Dixie, the killer discussed in the case involving Sally Ann Bowman. According to Laura Richards, the former head of the Homicide Prevention Unit at Scotland Yard, the three men were, in her words, consulting one another ahead of their upcoming trials, essentially trying to manipulate the system. She explained that Levi Belfield and Mark Dixie developed an unusual relationship after being housed in neighboring cells at Belmarsh Prison. Later, Carl joined them. Together, they reportedly misled prison psychologists, using calculated tactics and learned behaviors to present themselves in certain ways. All three were due to stand trial within weeks of each other at the Old Bailey in London. The trial took place at the Old Bailey, the historic Central Criminal Court that has witnessed some of the most serious and high-profile criminal cases in British history. And now, it was Carl Taylor's turn. The public gallery was filled with people who wanted to see justice served. Carl continued to insist he was innocent. The prosecution reminded the court that he had already confessed to killing Kate, and that the forensic evidence supported that confession. Jurors were told that Carl and Kate first met on May 18th at the CC Club in Piccadilly, central London. A few weeks later, they arranged a proper date. They chose a pub in Richmond Hill. During that date, according to witness statements, she appeared distant. She wasn't giving him much attention. One witness later told police, the moment they sat down, the girl lowered her head and started texting on her phone. There wasn't really a conversation, he was the only one talking to her. She just kept typing. She was still texting even while they were walking. After that, they walked over to a bench along the embankment. And here's the part that really changes everything. Carl had brought scissors and a kitchen knife with him hidden up his sleeve. That wasn't spontaneous. That wasn't panic. That was preparation. At trial, Carl Taylor chose to testify in his own defense. He told the court that Kate was kind and sweet, but claimed she was emotionally distressed and intended to take her own life. He said he tried to stop her, that he did everything he could. But the medical evidence told a completely different story. Her injuries were so severe that she physically could not have inflicted them on herself without collapsing or losing consciousness. The pattern, the force, the number of wounds, it simply didn't support his version. At one point, the prosecutor rolled up a sheet of paper to simulate a knife. He handed it to Carl and asked him to demonstrate right there in front of the judge, the jury, and everyone in the courtroom how Kate could have stabbed herself more than 30 times in the face, head, and neck. Carl refused. The judge, Mr. Justice Forrester, made it clear that Carl did not control the proceedings and that he was expected to comply. When he finally attempted to demonstrate his claim, the display was described as absurd, humiliating. It didn't resemble reality. And then he told the court, she was stabbing herself in the neck while pulling her own hair, so her head was moving. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there in shock. When I realized she was dead, I cried. I lay down on the grass and looked up at the sky. After that, according to his own account, he dragged her body back to her car. This wasn't some sudden impulse, not panic, not confusion. It was a deliberate act. It required strength, focus, control. By that point, he wasn't just reacting, he was actively trying to distance himself from the scene. And that contrast is hard to ignore. The quiet around him, the normal sounds of the night, everyday life continuing somewhere nearby, and in the middle of it all, something horrific had just happened. When CCTV captured him pulling into a gas station and buying 1 pound worth of fuel, Kate's body was in the trunk. From the outside, everything looked ordinary. The car pulled up to the pump, a quick transaction, no rush, no visible panic. But what those cameras recorded was chilling, because in that exact moment, inside that car, was the evidence of a brutal killing. In court, that detail hit hard. It painted a picture of someone acting calmly, methodically, not someone overwhelmed or in shock. During the trial, it also came out that Carl Taylor had written a letter to Kate's family from his cell at Staines Police Station. "My name is Carl. I'm the man who went on a date with your daughter on Friday evening. Honestly, my first impression of her was that she was a kind but unhappy girl. At least that's how it seemed to me in the short time I knew her. I began to understand that she was like an angel, but in darkness. Even though Katie is no longer with us, she still shines brightly, like a star in the night sky. I may have taken your daughter's life, but we all know some more than others that her heart continues to beat in the good we do, and her soul lives on in our cherished memories of her. For many years now, my life hasn't felt like it belongs to me because of events that broke my heart, but your lives go on. And with the greatest respect, I say this: Katie won't simply be a memory. She will be a true source of joy, proof that angels walk the earth, even if sometimes they have to return to heaven. We live in a world where everyone struggles, and those who try to embrace goodness often face rejection. Without a doubt, what I have done is wrong. But ask yourselves, whose life did I really take? I don't expect this letter to ease your pain, but when the birds sing in spring and the flowers bloom, think of Katie. Let the love you have always had, and will always have, for her echo in your hearts like a drumbeat from the moment she first opened her eyes. When you miss her, look at a star, and I promise you, just as I have seen it myself, she will shine, and she will live in your hearts forever. Remember, you have not lost her, just as she has not lost you. Sometimes you don't have to touch a flower for it to grow. The detectives who intercepted that letter made a careful and incredibly difficult decision. They chose not to pass it on to Kate's family. They understood that the contents could cause even deeper pain to people who had already lost everything. After the hearings, after the horrifying details laid out in court, the family did not need another blow. So, the letter remained in the case file, but it never reached the people it was supposedly written to. Less than 2 hours after the jury retired to deliberate, a heavy silence settled over the courtroom. Every eye was fixed on the door behind which Carl Taylor's fate was being decided. Time moved slowly, almost painfully slowly. 2 hours felt like forever. When the jury returned, their faces were composed, controlled. The verdict was delivered clearly, without hesitation. Carl Taylor guilty. That single word cut through the room. As the verdict was read, there were shouts. Emotions that had been held back for months finally broke free. For some, it was relief. For others, anger. For others still, tears that had been waiting for this moment. The atmosphere built up by months of waiting, fear, and grief erupted all at once. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years. That meant he would not even be eligible to apply for release before serving those 30 years. The court had reached its conclusion, but for Kate's family, there was no real conclusion. And then Judge Mr. Justice Forrester turned to him and said, "I am satisfied that this was a murder committed for gain. You went to meet this young woman carrying a knife. She was simply seeking friendship from you. You exploited her vulnerability for your own purposes." Carl tried to interrupt. "No, Your Honor, I didn't." But the judge continued, firm and unmoved. "The use of the knife was premeditated. You brought it with you and concealed it. And after committing this appalling crime, you transported her body and coldly concealed it." The judge also described Carl as arrogant, manipulative, and extremely dangerous.
The spot where her body was found is now marked by a police tent. It's about 50 yards from the main road here. This is an area known locally as a nature reserve. It's just next to a private housing estate. The woods themselves are popular with joggers and dog walkers.
After the verdict was announced, Kate's father stepped outside the courthouse and addressed the media.
Today, flowers mark the spot close to where she died. One message reads, "We miss you, Kate, and wish you were still this side of the rainbow."
After the conclusion of this long and deeply complex case, 7 detectives from Surrey Police, along with an analyst from the Metropolitan Police Service, were formally recognized for their relentless and exhausting work. For months, they carried out painstaking checks, interviews, and detailed forensic reviews. Step by step, they reconstructed what had happened. It was work that demanded clear thinking, patience, and absolute attention to detail. And in the end, it led to justice. Deputy Chief Constable Craig Denholm said, "This was a complex investigation involving 3 police jurisdictions and multiple crime scenes. It required coordination across different forces, real-time information sharing, and the meticulous examination of every lead. Securing a life sentence with a minimum term of 30 years is a testament to the exceptional teamwork of the officers involved." He emphasized that the case demanded more than just professionalism, it required persistence. Every piece of evidence, every digital footprint, every witness statement, all of it was carefully reviewed, methodically analyzed, never rushed. And it was that discipline, that steady, coordinated effort that ultimately made it possible for the court to deliver the strongest possible sentence. The violence Kate endured in the final minutes of her life was, honestly, the kind of thing you associate with the darkest nightmares. This wasn't just a crime. It was a level of brutality that's hard to process, even harder to accept. When you really stop and think about what she went through in those last moments, it sends chills through you. Every detail of this story adds to that weight, that feeling of helplessness, that cold, heavy silence that follows. And the way he disposed of her body with such calculated composure only deepens the horror. There was no panic, no chaos. Just control, just deliberate steps to erase what he had done. To distance himself from the place where a living, breathing person, someone who had plans, who had dreams, had just been killed. And that's what's most terrifying. Because it doesn't speak of impulse. It speaks of a decision. Yes, he received a life sentence with a minimum term of 30 years. The court delivered its verdict. The formal words were spoken. The punishment was announced. But no sentence brings Kate back. No number written into a judgment can fill the space she left behind. For her family, the punishment is different. They are serving a life sentence of their own, one without release. Every morning begins with the same reality, the same absence, the same quiet that will never again be broken by her voice. Time moves forward, but grief doesn't operate on a schedule. There is no parole from that. No date circled on a calendar when it suddenly gets easier. As Kate's father, Alan, said, "I still feel hollow, cold, and that feeling will never leave me." Kate was so alive, so full of energy. What did she feel in those final seconds as she was being so brutally attacked? An unimaginable terror, confusion. The consequences of this violent act have changed so many lives forever. My wife can't find comfort in anything. She sees nothing ahead but emptiness for the rest of her life.